Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Thanks for joining this afternoon. Wonder if a lot of you are getting ready for the Super Bowl. I certainly am not. I can't wait not to watch it. There's a lot of other more important things that are going on, and especially in Canada and across the entire planet, quite honestly, that's obviously not being covered in the mainstream media. So that's why it's important for people like you guys out there that are watching the live feeds on people on the ground on Facebook and YouTube and other places, as long as they're able to continue to provide the footage without being censored. We need to see what's going on. And I wanted to start with this picture here. This was at the Ambassador Bridge. I'm not sure if this was this morning or if it was yesterday, because I was watching a lot yesterday with the peaceful, respectful, just regular run-of-the-mill, super nice people of Canada. And I didn't have time to put it in this presentation, but the Wall Street Journal had posted something that said, the Canadians are probably the most law-abiding citizens in the world, and when you lose them, you lose the narrative. And I think that's what's happened here. And I want to play in a second some things about Justin Trudeau, which when I hear him talk, it just makes me mad. It just angers me listening to him, because the way that he speaks, he speaks in a demeaning manner towards the citizens of Canada, and he treats them like children. And I'm going to show you a couple of things of why I think he is does act in that particular manner, and just doesn't really care about the citizens of Canada. And that's the same here in the United States with the left, and it's the same in Australia, the same in New Zealand, and I'll show you some clips there and what's going on in France. There's a lot of pushback. There are a lot of protests going on, New Zealand, France, everywhere. And it's more along the lines of there's no World War III or anything like that. It's more of a global civil war, in my opinion, where people are sick and tired of tyranny and oppression. And it's just different from what we've seen throughout history. It's different from, people gathering arms and doing all these things, especially when you see what's happening with Canadians in Ottawa and how they manage to, even with the media blackout, the mainstream media blackout, how they're able to change the hearts and minds of people and get attention without having to use violence. They're still being demeaned. They're still being called racist, and all the horrible things that you could talk to these people. And you've seen, hopefully, if you haven't seen it, don't go do it now, because you're going to leave the live stream. But there is the video that I did of two people who lived in Ottawa who basically said, these are some of the nicest people we've ever met. These are not violent people. These are not bad people. We've had really meaningful conversations. We've really, we understand why they're here and what they're doing. And then this photo, this is, when you talk about the left saying we can't have police militarized, now what the hell is this? So you can sit there and tell me that the left doesn't want militarized police, but yet look in the back of the police that are in military gear. That's actual military. And then behind them is an armored vehicle that looks like it could wipe out thousands. And so, can you guys hear me okay? Is there volume? I just want to make sure. I see some people are saying that they can't hear me, but turn up my sound. Is that any better? Test 1, 2, 3. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. All right, good. Just want to make sure everybody can hear me. So, yeah. So going back to what I was saying, the left talking about how the military, militarization of police is a bad thing. We can't have that. That's, it's terrible. Just look at this photo and look, this is the Ambassador Bridge. And again, I don't know if this was from from this morning or yesterday, but yesterday I was watching all day and looking at all of the protesters and the interaction with police and everything else. And the people of the protest were some of the most gentle, wonderful people. Nothing violent. They weren't even talking trash to the police at all. Some of them were actually walking up and having conversations with them. But there was before I started and I'm going to try and find this chat. The person who left the chat basically said, well, how come we didn't see this during the BLM riots and the Antifa riots during the summer? But yet we see the militarization of police. And if you look behind the police there, I'm sorry if I'm repeating to myself to those who've already heard this because of the volume issues, but there's actual military standing behind these militarized police. And then behind them is a military vehicle that, to me, looks pretty scary. And, when the left says we can't have militarized police, and yet the militarized police are coming in to essentially get rid of the people that are, or disband the protesters, the very peaceful protesters, by the way, of the Ambassador Bridge. It just goes to show you the hypocrisy of the left. It's just unbelievable to watch. But I want to also go into the press conference that Justin Trudeau, I think he did it yesterday, about the protesters and how horrible they are and what they're doing to the economy and everything. They're basically throwing truckers under the bus. We've already had supply chain issues. We already have problems with the economy, but yet somehow the truckers are the ones that are causing it all. So I'm going to play a video clip that I don't know if many of you have actually seen this or not. Probably a lot of Canadians have. But for those who like to blame Donald Trump and call him a dictator, watch this video.
There's a level of admiration I actually have for China. Because their basic dictatorship is allowing them to actually turn their economy around on a dime and say, we need to go green as fast as we need to start, investing in solar. I mean, there is a flexibility that I know Stephen Harper must dream about, of having a dictatorship that he could do everything he wanted, that I find quite interesting.
So there you have Justin Trudeau actually saying that he admires China and he admires their dictatorship. So here's a guy who actually on video actually says it. How you could vote for somebody like that is beyond me. But then for those who say Donald Trump's a dictator, here's a guy who actually said that he was, and he admires it. And this is showing in his actions to the peaceful protesters of Ottawa and different areas. And by the way, these things are happening all over Canada now. So it's going to, somebody said it's going to be like a whack-a-mole where, yeah, you're going to have these protests going on all over the place. And, you know, they're just, you know, I guess they're going to just have to send out military and police and everything to stop one, and another one's going to come up, and another one's. So anyway, let me switch over to the actual press conference, because I want to show you, those of you who haven't seen it, you know, these things that he's saying about the protesters are really unbelievable. Hold on.
Are hurting Canadians, whether they're in Ottawa, Windsor, Coutts, or Emerson. They're endangering jobs. They're threats to our economy and to public safety. The blockades are hurting small businesses and neighborhoods. At the border, they're impacting trade, supply chains, and manufacturing.
So I just want to stop that for a second. So you see, we already have supply chain issues going on. We've had it going on for a while. But do you notice that, you know, because Trudeau obviously is a part of the oligarchy, and he is basically controlled by big business, now it's the time for them to throw the truckers under the bus when it comes to the supply chain issues, even though we've had supply chain issues for a very long time. So now, at first it was they were racist, they were violent, they're terrible people. Now, that didn't work. So now what he's saying is that the truckers are stopping the supply chain. Not that we don't have airplanes that are, you know, sending goods back and forth. It's the truckers that are destroying the economy all over the world. So blaming big business, this is what's happening. Big business is blaming truckers and farmers for the supply chain issues and the cost of goods, the increased cost of goods, which we've already seen before any of this stuff happening. It was the lockdowns that caused this. And yes, Shirley Quinn, he is a minion for Klaus Schwab. He is. So people like the elite, like Klaus Schwab, are the ones that are dictating his words. Paul 2D, correct. Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand is also a student of Klaus Schwab as well. Because this isn't about supply chain. This isn't about any of this stuff. It's about, and I'll go over this later, towards the end, but this is about a carbon footprint. That's what this is about. This is about having people not travel, having people not get in their cars and go to work, but make Microsoft rich and other companies rich by staying in their homes and doing everything on a computer. Not going out and enjoying your lives, not going out and doing things, because somehow they think that because they know better when it comes to carbon emissions and global warming, that they can control all of you. And that's what this is all about.
The people these blockades are hurting are everyday families. Auto assembly workers, farmers, truckers, and blue-collar Canadians. This morning, I spoke with David Cassidy of Unifor, who told me how badly this is hurting workers in Southern Ontario. We both agree that blockades are unacceptable and that they have to end for the good of all Canadians. This morning, I had a direct call with President Biden to talk about our shared challenges at the border. I updated him on the situation, particularly in Windsor. We discussed the American and indeed global influences on the protest. We talked about the U.S.-based flooding of the 911 phone lines in Ottawa, the presence of U.S. citizens in the blockades, and the impact of foreign money to fund this illegal activity. President.
So now he's going after people that are giving money to the truckers, and he's calling it funding illegal activity now. So now everybody that supports him is an enemy of the state.
Biden and I both agree that for the security of people and the economy, these blockades cannot continue.
But before, it was okay to lock everybody down and not have anybody go out and work, not have anybody go out and produce, not have anybody go out and do anything in order to support the economy. So the lockdowns were okay. But when people say, no, I want to work, I want to produce, I want things to happen, I want to be able to make the economy happen. Trudeau, who is an admitted communist, an admitted dictator, who admires China and their dictatorship. For those of you who are just joining, I played that video. He admits on video that he admires China and China's dictatorship. He admires it. He admires it because he thinks that by having a dictatorship, and he has an idea, and he thinks that everybody should follow it, having a dictatorship can allow him with authority to make everybody do what he wants them to do.
So make no mistake, the border cannot and will not remain closed. I want to remind everyone that politicians don't direct police in a democratic society, but I can assure you that the RCMP is working with provincial.
Now, I don't know if anybody believed that's just that last statement, that he's not directing the police, the politicians aren't directing police. Kimberly arrested a 70-year-old man for honking his horn, pulled him out of his car, cuffed him, and stuffed him in. I don't know if anyone's seen that. But you can't tell me that politicians aren't directing the police to do this stuff.
Local police departments to enforce the law. Everything is on the table because this unlawful activity has to end, and it will end.
Hear that? Everything's on the table, and it will end. So what does that mean? He's showing that the police are militarized, showing that the police will do whatever it is they can to stop this. I wonder what he means by that. How far will they go?
Of course, I can't say too much more now as to exactly when or how this ends, because unfortunately we are concerned about violence. So we're taking every precaution.
So he's concerned about violence, yet there hasn't been any violence. They've been trying to lie to you, telling you that the protesters are violent, but they're not. None of these people have been violent. They've been peaceful all the way through, but somehow Trudeau he's worried about violence.
To keep people safe. But the absolute safest way for this to end is for everyone to return to your communities now. If you're still participating in illegal blockades, you're hurting your neighbors. So it's time to go home, especially.
Justin Trudeau's been hurting the neighbors. Justin Trudeau, through his lockdowns and tyranny and oppression, has been hurting neighbors. The protesters are doing what they can peacefully to get their point across that obviously Justin Trudeau is not hearing, and he won't hear it because he thinks that all of you are nobody, that he's a dictator and he can tell you exactly what to do. And if you don't like it, then you're going to be punished.
if you have kids with you. Laws, regulations, and practices that ensure funds cannot be used for criminal or illegal activity, and these blockades are illegal. Canadian banks are monitoring financial activity very closely and taking action as necessary.
Okay. That was one of the things that really, really made my blood boil. Did you just hear what he just said? Banks are monitoring essentially recipients of the money from Give, Send, Go. That's what I glean from that. Now, we all know that GoFundMe froze the assets to the truckers and didn't allow the truckers to get those funds. So what ended up happening was, and by the way, that was by direction of the Ottawa police. So GoFundMe, who hopefully will be investigated and hopefully will be punished for fraud. We'll see. At least our governor here in Florida is going to investigate it. Hopefully more law enforcement agencies will investigate for fraud for GoFundMe. But it was switched over to Give, Send, Go. Give, Send, Go is basically giving the finger to Canada, who's saying don't give the funds to the truckers. They've said in plenty of Twitter posts. In fact, they had one today that said, what's your response to the Canadian government telling us not to give the money to the truckers? Kind of as a joke, as a, an FU. But that's not going to stop Justin. So Justin, little boy Justin, is going to go tell the banks now to not let the funds go through, to freeze assets of people. That's not totalitarianism. That's not oppression and tyranny. I mean, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. And yet Donald Trump's an effing dictator. What planet do you live on? Because it's not this one, if that's what you think. But this is the worst part of the deal. That your money is now not safe with banks because somebody like Justin Trudeau can order banks to freeze assets of people.
I want to make something very clear. The illegal blockades seeking to take our neighborhoods and our economy hostage, and the collective COVID fatigue we are facing are two very separate things.
No, actually, they're the same thing. People are sick and tired of your dictatorship, your lockdowns, everything else. And yes, Jamie, great reset. Your great reset, everybody's sick and tired of. And they're not two separate things. They're connected.
If you joined the protests because you're tired of COVID, you now need to understand that you are breaking laws. The consequences are becoming more and more severe. You don't want to end up losing your license, end up with a criminal record, which will impact your job, your livelihood, even your ability to travel internationally, including to the U.S.
Now, that's probably even worse than what he said before. He's just told you that if you participate in any of this, you're going to have a criminal record. You're not going to be able to travel internationally, so you're going to be a prisoner in your own country. You're going to lose your job, your licenses. You're going to lose everything. Because if you support these guys, you're going to live in what used to be the USSR, to where you couldn't leave, or East Germany, you couldn't leave. If you tried to leave, they'd shoot you. That's what's happening. Do people not see this? That this man, who everybody who believes it because they watch them stupid asses on mainstream media tell you that Donald Trump's a dictator. Here's an actual dictator. Here's a guy who's actually saying that if you support this, you're going to lose your job, you're going to lose your livelihood, and you're not going to be able to travel outside the country. That is remarkable. Yeah, and then somebody said, yeah, people still support this guy. You know, if you support somebody like this, you need to have your head examined.
We've heard your frustration with COVID.
No, you haven't.
With the measures that are there to keep people safe. We've heard you.
He hasn't heard anything. He's saying that because he wants everybody to stop. And then when he continues on in this speech, or this press conference, he's going to tell you that we've heard you. And I'm going to paraphrase it because this is really what he means, but I don't give a shit. Because everything that we've been doing is perfectly fine, and what we continue to do, we're going to continue to do this. Listen to this.
It's time to go home now. And to the people who are tired of this pandemic, that is, all Canadians, I want you to be able to get back to the things that you love. I hear you, all of you.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't hear anybody. He doesn't want you to get back to anything. That's the point. The point of all this is to keep you in your homes so you don't create a carbon footprint, so you don't continue to have to pollute the air with your carbon and exacerbate global warming. That's what this is all about.
Parliamentarians hear it in their communities. We all hear it from friends and family. From people like Lori from here in Ontario, who wrote to me to say she disagrees with the bad behavior of the blockaders, but she's also tired of the restrictions. Or Helen from Toronto, who's worried about what the restrictions are doing to children's mental health. I understand.
Does anybody believe what he's saying right now? Helen from Toronto wrote him a letter. That's what he's listening to. And I'm sure it's made up. If you see all of the people that are out there that are being suppressed, with their voices being suppressed on social media, it is overwhelming against what Trudeau is doing. But he has to pick out Helen from Toronto and so from this place and that place. But he has no intention of making any changes, and he hasn't hurt anybody.
We don't want these measures to last longer than they should.
Yeah.
And we never did. But the truth is, because of all of our efforts, we saved more lives in Canada than in many other countries. We helped people like Samuel.
And by the way, there are more studies coming out now that are actually saying the lockdowns had a reverse effect. That the lockdowns actually didn't save anybody. So, for him to say what he's saying it's a lie. And as time goes on and we start to see more and more things come out, we'll start to see that wasn't the case.
From Courtney, BC, who also wrote to tell me that as a healthcare worker, our measures are keeping him safe. Consider and reconsider what's possible and what's best to protect Canadians. I have multiple meetings every week to talk about what the next step are. And this morning, for example, I spoke with Dr. Tam and Minister Duclos, among others, about the plan to adjust travel measures under federal jurisdiction. As Canadians, it's important to continue being there for one another. We're fighting a virus. We're not fighting each other. People are making sacrifices and have been for the past 2 years. It's never the time to hurt our economy and fellow Canadians with illegal blockades, but especially not now. After all we've sacrificed together, after all we've done to get back to the things we love and reopen our lives.
All the things that you've done and all the things that the other world leaders have done. You're the ones who caused this problem. You're the ones who've affected our economy. On the left. And I know in America we have a uniparty. But it's the things that he's done that have affected the economy. And for him to throw truckers under the bus because they don't want passports, no one's saying not get vaccinated. If you want to do it, do it. No one's saying not to do it. It's not what this is about. It's about a passport to allow you to travel freely. This is CCCP stuff, East Germany stuff. Because people like him and others like him, under the tutelage of Klaus Schwab and other university professors and people who call themselves elitist, which really aren't that smart. They're not that smart. They teach, they're teachers, they're university professors. And they think that what we'll do is we'll have this great reset. We're gonna set everything all over again because we know better than everybody else. But it is unacceptable to not take any responsibility at all for what happened and to then throw it all on the truckers because the truckers are saying, hey, I want to be able to drive my truck. And by the way, here's people who are in their truck by themselves all the time. They're not interacting with people. They want to be able to move freely so they can do their job and deliver goods and do all these things without having to worry about how long is it going to take for somebody to check my passport, to do this and that and the other thing. It has nothing to do with anything other than having to prove through a passport that you've had this vaccination. TC72, I come from East Germany. I'm a child of the GDR. Please fight for your freedom. Skinner JW BlackRock. That's a whole nother thing that Larry Fink and BlackRock. That's a story that I don't know if I'll have time to get into today, but Disney's ESPN whistleblower, all kinds of stuff going on.
Are hurting.
But here, I don't know. I think this was probably this morning because everybody's cleared out at the Ambassador Bridge, but there are a few guys that just decided to stick around, and unfortunately they had to pay the price.
This will be our first arrest here.
So everybody avoided arrest except for these guys. Sorry about the volume, but you get the picture by seeing what's happening.
Okay.
Bobby Alex Jones was saying it for years. LOL, just saying, you're right. But it's better that people start waking up about stuff. It's better, you know. And I think people are. People are starting to see what's going on like this year. This is East German kind of stuff. And other videos that I've done that show...
This guy's told he's got 5 seconds.
Those from Poland who were bringing a bunch of food for the protesters said, we come from communist governments, and that's what's happening to us now. We didn't move to Canada to live under communist rule. Joe Mangear, somebody else said this too. These cops look brave, not when BLM is around. So this is the point. The hypocrisy is now laughable, and that's why like Babylon Bee and other satire sites are so popular, because the satire actually becomes the truth. Where you have actual burning down of buildings, people's businesses lost because of violence, police headquarters being burned, people getting knocked out and killed. You've seen, I don't know if a lot of you have seen these violent videos of people getting knocked out cold, and the police doing nothing to stop it. Mama knows, but in the summer of riots, those protesters could run police from their departments to loot and burn. So in other words, yeah, the police in Portland didn't do anything. The police in San Francisco are doing nothing. New York City, they're doing nothing. I mean, there's stores in New York that are just closing down because they just can't keep their stock in anymore because it keeps getting, ripped off. But we can have militarized police like this intimidating and harassing the most peaceful people there are probably in the world. But yet Donald Trump's a dictator. And any of you, and this is a global thing, but has your property insurance gone up? Are you sick and tired of how much money you have to pay in property insurance? I mean, it just seems to keep going up all the time. I know it certainly does here in Florida, and I know in other parts of the world it is. Do you know why? You won't hear this from Rachel Maddow or Brian Stelter, Joy Reid. You won't hear this from them. $2 to $5 billion from the riots in the summer of 2020. $2 to $5 billion. And I'm thinking it's probably on the higher end. Canadian police do carry guns. At least that's what I see. But insurance costs to deal with the riots in the summer of 2020 were in the billions. That affects everybody. But no one talked about that. We're talking about now how the truckers who are blocking a bridge are causing supply chain issues and the rise of the cost of goods, even though that stuff was happening a long time ago because of all the lockdowns caused by these politicians who are now blaming it on truckers. But nobody in the mainstream media, no politicians talked about how many billions of dollars it cost for insurance companies Mindy, Windsor protest still going. The people are pushed into the sidewalk. But no one from the mainstream media talks about how many people were affected in those local areas, Kenosha and Minneapolis and LA and all these different places where houses were burned, Businesses were destroyed. Lives were lost. People were injured. Andy Ngo, who was going out and just trying to cover it, gets a brain hemorrhage from the beating he took from Antifa. But to see these militarized police with actual military standing behind them with military vehicles, do you not see the irony in this? I mean, it's become a joke. Justin Trudeau's become a joke. Joe Biden's becoming a huge joke. But yet, Donald Trump's a dictator. I'm not going to sit here and say that Donald Trump's the greatest freaking president ever. But for people to believe all of the things that the mainstream media said about him, and then they're not doing a thing. They're covering for Joe Biden and all of his, just what's happening with him is just, it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing to see this man. Falling upstairs. Bear with me. I'm trying to go through some of the chats. There's a lot of stuff here. Guys, you can do super chats too. If I see those, I'll be able to read them easier because they'll be highlighted. There's a lot of chats going on in here, which is great. But I want to show what's going on in New Zealand. Here's another one, Jacinda Ardern, who's also was under the tutelage of our boy Klaus Schwab. They're protesting, but you don't see this on the mainstream media. Those guys are scary. I think those are natives of New Zealand where they do that dance. I've seen that before. But people in New Zealand, and that's just one video. There's another video of course, police abusing citizens of New Zealand who are protesting. And don't forget all the videos that are out there of Australian police beating up on senior citizens. And that one person, I forget your name, we just mentioned the old man in Ottawa who was honking his horn that was dragged out of his car and thrown to the ground by Ottawa police. So they go around beating up on senior citizens. They go around beating up on innocent protesters. They flank them from the left and the right on the Ambassador Bridge Road with military and military vehicles, but they don't do anything to the actual violent protesters. And it's not just here, it's everywhere. If that doesn't tell you something, if that doesn't tell you what's happening in the world, then nothing else is going to convince you. This one I thought was pretty interesting in France. There's a guy playing a squeeze box while a bunch of cops are running after protesters. It's happening everywhere, but it's a media blackout. You're not seeing it. Why? Because they're all colluding together. They're all one big cabal. And God forbid somebody points it out, they get silenced. I'm seeing some videos of police saying, you know, I don't support this, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, politicians are bad, but it's even worse when you have police that are enforcing this kind of stuff and not standing up to the politicians. Because, I mean, in here, Justin Trudeau is trying to tell you it's not the politicians that are directing the police. I mean, does everything he says, is it everything that he says a lie? Everything that he says? Jamie, Trump did win. I mean, I don't believe anything anymore. Ken Leonard, the police took a knee for Antifa/BLM. Don't do the same for the great patriotic citizens out there now who are peaceful and in the right. Very well said, Ken. Fan enthusiasts. The BLM riots were people fighting a ghost that was propped up to them by Charles Schwab and his media assets. What I find funny is even our own vice president, Kamala Harris, is bailing people out of jail who were arrested for violence in those riots. But the good people, the peaceful protesters, there's no support from them. I haven't heard anything from our government on it. But to go a little bit further, I want to talk about something that I'm going to be posting in the Substack. So if you haven't signed up yet, it's DennisHendrickson.substack.com. And I'm going to post a long version of alternative medicines when it comes to more specifically the ivermectin thing. But just to show you, when there's a montage when it comes to calling or with Trump. When I find it, I'll show it to you in hopefully next week. But here's a montage of, let me tee it up first. So I had gotten COVID during the summer last year. And I think there was monoclonal antibody kind of there was stuff going on, but remdesivir was one of the things that was mentioned, which turns out to be, this is a Fauci thing, by the way, which is really dangerous. And ivermectin was kind of like being talked about a little bit. But as kind of time went on, months went by, ivermectin gained more, I guess, popularity in a sense. And I also preface this by saying, don't know if it works or not, but at least at the very least, it should be investigated. It should be researched, which is happening now. So I'm not trying to make any sort of give any medical advice or anything like that. And like I've always said, if you want to get the vaccine, I'd do it. It's fine. It's your choice. And that's the whole point. Freedom of choice. You can be able to do what it is you want. But I had mentioned ivermectin to a friend and some other people. And they're like, the horse medicine? I'm like, no. It's horse medicine, but it's also been repurposed for veterinary medicine. It was originally invented in 1975 for human use, for river blindness, for other things. And this started, it was invented in 1975. But when people are calling me stupid acting like I'm an idiot because I happen to bring that up. This is where they were getting their information from.
Never thought I'd have to do an explainer on why people should not use animal dewormer, but here we are.
It blows my mind that Joe Rogan just yesterday admitted to taking ivermectin.
Ivermectin is something more often used to deworm horses.
CNN is saying I'm taking horse dewormer.
Rogan telling his 13 million Instagram followers that he was treated with several drugs, and he included ivermectin on the list, a drug used for livestock.
Rogan said the word ivermectin. Yes, that's the deworming medicine made to kill parasites in farm animals.
Why would they lie and say that's horse dewormer?
So things are clearly bad, but they're being made even worse by people who have refused to take the vaccine and instead are swallowing horse paste.
Wait a second. He said that he got better because he ate cattle dewormer.
They must know that that's a lie.
We have individuals like Joe Rogan, for example, who don't want to take an experimental vaccine but will take horse dewormer.
Horse dewormer.
A deworming medication,
Which is most often used to deworm pets and livestock.
It's literal horse pills.
That's a horse dewormer.
A deworming product for cows and horses.
Well. If it isn't old horseworm Rogan.
Ivermectin is often used to deworm livestock.
Ivermectin apparently given to deworm animals.
It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that's a lie that they're conscious of. This is not a mistake.
Yeah.
They're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine.
Joe Rogan, he came down with COVID. He says he's been taking the livestock dewormer ivermectin.
They lied and said I was taking horse dewormer.
Ivermectin is a drug that is commonly used as a horse dewormer.
They keep saying I'm taking horse dewormer. I literally got it from a doctor.
Doctors say you could take it for humans.
That's right. Treat the virus with antibacterial medication, and while the virus is wondering if it's inside the biggest idiot on the planet, bam, the horse dewormer pounces.
Ivermectin, it is a medicine commonly used to treat livestock and other animals.
He's taking a cocktail of medications, including the controversial horse deworming drug, ivermectin.
Animal dewormer.
This is a deworming agent, a parasitic deworming agent for livestock.
I can afford people medicine, mother. This is ridiculous.
Now medical experts fear Rogan's millions of fans will follow his lead.
You could also die from overdoses of ivermectin, and I hope that people realize this and heed the advice of public health experts rather than Joe Rogan.
He's not a doctor. He sure is talking like one, as if he is one, though. He also told his millions of followers that he's taking
Ivermectin, usually used in livestock.
Ivermectin is a drug used to treat worms.
Pills meant for horses to treat COVID-19.
Ivermectin.
Which is meant for horses.
a drug which is used to deworm animals.
So in a tweet, the FDA wrote, quote,
You are not a horse.
You are not a cow.
Seriously, y'all. Seriously, y'all.
Serious, y'all.
seriously, y'all.
Stop it.
Read the tweet from the FDA's official account.
One, we don't even know if Joe Rogan has been vaccinated. He won't say. And two, he is not a horse.
Do not take deworming products that you would normally use on your cows or horses.
He may not have gotten it from the feed supply store, but it's the same compound.
When you have a horse deworming medication that's discouraged by the government, that actually causes some people in this crazed environment we're in to actually want to try it. That's the upside down world we're in with figures like Joe Rogan.
Bro, do I have to sue CNN?
He also acknowledged taking a controversial treatment designed for animals.
Does it bother you that the news network you work for out and out lied, just outright lied about me taking horse dewormer?
They shouldn't have said that.
Why did they do that?
I don't know.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is why Joe Rogan is under attack like no one's ever been under attack before. How he gets 11 million views per episode on average, compared to a fraction of that by CNN. And Sanjay Gupta admits on his show that CNN lied, and all these other ones that I just showed you lied about ivermectin. And again, I'm not sitting here saying that's better than anything, but it should be investigated. It should be, and it is now. And if you do look on the websites, CDC, I think it's NIH, that it's still currently kind of being looked at as a antiviral to stop viral replication. So if there's something that's out there that you could take to stop viral replication, wouldn't you want to investigate it? But instead you see this montage of people on these networks that shape the view of a lot of people, calling it horse medication. I mean, penicillin is a human medication. It's also used in animals. Does that mean it's an animal medication because it's penicillin can be used in animals? It was invented in 1970. Ivermectin was invented in 1975 by William Campbell and Satoshi Amura. They won the 2015 Nobel Prize for its use. It's been prescribed billions with a B, billions of times. Very low side effects, and this is proven in the research. So that one other doctor that they have telling you that you can overdose from it, at least from the human perspective, there's been 500 plus studies or so that show that that's not the case. There are a lot because it's been prescribed since 1975 billions of times. But the overall point of this is what I'm trying to make is, do you see the collusion of the media to formulate a narrative to push out to the people of the world, not just the United States, not just Canada, but everywhere? And then when somebody comes back and says, no, wait, that's not no, that's wrong. They get silenced. That to me is even worse. When you silence truth, when you silence people like Joe Rogan because it's competition for you. Catherine O'Connell, information. It is an information war. We are in a war of information. We're not going to have kinetic wars like we used to. It's more controlling information, which arguably is more powerful than guns and weapons. And then the FDA says, y'all, that's real professional. Stop it, y'all. I mean, that was a long time ago. I mean, you're the FDA and you're going to tweet out something like that? But again, the overall point that I'm trying to make there is, and you have this Sanjay Gupta on the most watched, powerful program, podcast, whatever you want to call it, admitting, yeah, I don't know why CNN lied about that. I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, he works for him. I mean, if that doesn't tell you what's going on. Jamie, you can overdose on any drug. I mean, that's a good point. You're right. but you know, you have to purposefully do that. And again, it's to take that particular drug and to disparage it. And this same thing happened during the AIDS crisis. If some of you are old enough to remember, Anthony Fauci during the AIDS epidemic, where you had the AZT thing, you had all kinds of things going on back then related to AIDS. I mean, Fauci even said that you could be in the same room with your brother or your mom and catch it through the air. There were just endless amounts of mistruths about AIDS, and regulatory capture began back in the 80s when Fauci took over NIAID and NIH. Regulatory capture started way back then, where you have taxpayer money going to fund research for drugs and being pushed out for profit. This stuff has been going on for a really long time. And really nothing has changed from the 80s all the way up until now. And that's a whole different thing to go into. Way more complicated and complex. But if you think that our government agencies like the FDA and other looking out for our health, why is America one of the worst countries in the world when it comes to obesity and quality of food and disease and everything else? There's a reason for that. So this started back in the 80s. And for those of you who don't know what regulatory capture is, it's essentially it's people from privatized businesses that have taken control of government agencies for profit. I mean, someone could probably come up with a better definition than that, but that's pretty much what it is. So again, this, and then the media coverage, everything just kind of takes over and also does the bidding of these giant companies, giant corporations, oligarchy, to push the narrative. And God forbid somebody like Joe Rogan comes in and says something differently, he's got to get shut down. So, before I sign off, I want to play one more thing. I wanted to post this as a separate video, but I figured I'd wait to show it here on the live stream because I thought it was pretty damn powerful. This is a video of a bunch of kids in a Las Vegas school being told that they don't have to wear masks anymore. Let me turn up the volume as best as I can first before I play it.
Starting tomorrow, we don't have to wear masks anymore. Is anybody excited?
So if you didn't hear that, sorry about the volume. I'm having a little issues with the volume. But she said, starting tomorrow, we don't have to wear masks anymore, and the kids go bananas. And so this should never have happened in the first place. And even recently, news just came out. This is news. This isn't me making it up. News is that Pfizer pulled back their request to have kids under 5 years old taking the vaccine. These kids, I can't imagine not only just these little kids having to go through what they've been going through for all this time, but even kids that I know through, because I'm a tennis player. I play with kids who play tennis in college, and how their lives were turned upside down through all of this. And the best years of their lives have been essentially ruined. And to watch the reaction of these kids, it just goes to show you how excited they were now that they don't have to wear those masks anymore. And what I find funny too, which reminds me of something, is how all of these things now all of a sudden are changing from the provinces in Canada and other mandates, that all of a sudden the politicians, some of the politicians, when they see what's going on in Canada, all of a sudden the science changed. We don't have to do this stuff anymore. This is one thing that everybody needs to be careful of, is that when all of a sudden, because some politicians start seeing the pushback from what's going on in Canada, of all places, well, maybe we shouldn't be doing this anymore. Maybe we should roll back the mandates. Maybe we should make some changes here. So when that stuff happens, never forgive and never forget these politicians that did this stuff. Because people like, I think it's Diane Deans in Ottawa, the city council, somebody like that needs to be recalled. If you can do that, I don't know how it works there, and sued for human rights violations. A lot of these politicians should be punished for human rights violations. At the very least, they have to be voted out of office. You cannot continue to vote for this kind of stuff. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. And Bill Gates, don't get me started on him. A guy he was a millionaire by the time he was already born because of his grandfather, who made millions upon millions of dollars in the banking industry. And don't think that he's some genius that created this Microsoft thing out of nowhere. He had everything handed to him, including the initial meeting with IBM. He had everything lined up for him. And that software he didn't design, the software he got somewhere else. And now he's trying to tell all of us that we need all of these procedures. Shirley Quinn, Daddy was a eugenicist. Yep, you were right. Van M, science doesn't change, theory does. Yep. And what I find funny is these same nitwits that thought they had everything figured out and correct, like the ivermectin thing. They're so sure. They were so sure that it was a horse medicine that they call me a dumbass. And other people like me who actually did a little bit of research on it. I didn't listen to Joe Scarborough and his idiot wife on MSNBC or whatever the hell they're on. You just do a little bit of reading, do a little bit of research. Just a tiny bit to figure out what the hell's going on, and you'll find out the truth about it. Yeah, my perspective, Fauci has been silenced lately. I haven't heard much from him. Oh, and one other thing before I go. And when I find it, I'll post it. I'll probably post it in the community tab. So if you want to see updates and things like that, you can check out the community tab in the YouTube channel. I'll post things that are kind of shorter content. I'm trying to figure out how to do video. Most of the stuff that I'm putting up there is like pictures and things, like pictures of somebody's Twitter post or something like that. But there was a video of a woman asking, I don't know if it was an Ottawa police or OPP, I'm not really sure, whether or not the police were mandated to take the vaccine. And his answer was they were not mandated to take it. I can't verify that. I don't know if any of you that are in Canada can verify that or not. So I want to try and be as careful as I possibly can before I post anything to make sure that it's verifiable. But if that's the case, that's bad. That, again, kind of sums up what's happening. Steve Jobs created Windows, Gates stole it. Yeah, there was a thing between Steve Jobs and Gates. Steve Jobs basically didn't, his stuff wasn't his own either. In fact, I think the mouse was stolen from Xerox. And we have to stop putting our politicians on a pedestal and stop putting people like Gates on a pedestal. We're treating politicians as if some sort of Hollywood movie stars. And many of us aren't really even paying attention to Hollywood anymore. And to actually become more politics and treating people like AOC as some sort of, Hollywood star. They serve the people. They are not smarter than we are. They're not better than we are. They shouldn't make us do things that we don't want to do. Like what I did earlier in posting Justin Trudeau saying, I like dictatorships because if I think that something should be done a certain way, I get to make people do it just like China does, and not in so many words. Jamie, glad I found Dennis Hendrickson. Thank you. I'm just doing what, I had this old tennis channel and I just got sick and tired of what was going on. And it pretty much started with what happened with Novak Djokovic. We'll love him or hate him. The way he was treated by the Australian government got me to just say, you know what, things are just deteriorating at an alarming rate. And because I can't find anything that's going on, I'm going to post whatever it is that I can and talk about it. Little did I know that this was going to happen. So thank you for all of you that are here. I really appreciate it. I will try and read as much as I possibly can here. Jamie, Dennis, I stumbled upon your stream. I am glad. Thank you. Well, thank you, Jamie. Oh, yeah, Regina Pendleton. That's why there's so many deaths in nursing homes. So we had the Comfort, and I can't remember the name of the other ship, at least in the United States, one on each coast. Gigantic hospital ships. Neither one of them, along with additional tents and things like that to handle all the additional COVID cases. They were not used. So the Navy confirmed that because they weren't being used, they got rid of them. They sent them back to wherever they were. But yet, people like Whitmer and Cuomo decided to send sick people to nursing homes. You don't hear about that. And of course, charges were actually, I guess, they were looked at on Cuomo. I don't know about Whitmer, but of course they were dropped. Lisa Rowe de Waller Bridge. The info is out there, but people don't like to read. Yeah. I use this feed kind of thing that gives me, I don't know how many, probably 50, maybe even more now, news sources that is all culminated in one spot. So I can just, go through and both, by the way, right-leaning and left-leaning publications. So I can actually look at both and kind of see what one particular publication is saying, compare it to somebody else. That way I'm getting both sides of the thing. I'm not just sitting there watching television. You can't do that anymore. You cannot watch regular television and expect to be told the truth, number one, or with what's going on in Canada, be expected to see or be shown what is actually happening in the real world if it doesn't fit a narrative. You have to research it more. You have to look more. You have to find channels like Steven Crowder, Tim Pool, Jimmy Dore, and then decide for yourself, okay, based on what they're saying, is this true, not true? What is the other side saying? And what I find funny, too, about this whole Fauci thing is if Fauci is so confident, and all these people, by the way, CDC director, whatever her name is, forget her name, but if all these people are just so good and so on it, then debate. Have a debate with Robert Malone et al. All the others that, Brett Weinstein. Have a debate with those people. Let them say, this is what we think, and then have the other so-called experts argue their point. But that's not happening. Christy Este, I'm commenting on social media. I hope the police don't show up at my door. I showed, I did a video, OPP showing up at somebody's door because she belonged to a group about protesting. I'm not sure exactly what the group was. But, this very nice police officer, I mean, didn't seem like somebody would be a cop, I guess. It was kind of weird. Showed up handing out pamphlets and things on how to peacefully protest. In other words, how to do it the way we want you to do it. Which was really, come on, there's one more example of you're being watched. Anthony Gabby live feeds being blocked. Why? Bernadette Zelensky says Ottawa police staff sergeant resigns. I don't know if that's true or not. And, I'm sorry. The cops that allow this stuff to happen, it's because I'm going to feed my family. I need to feed my family. It doesn't work anymore. That's what the Nazi soldiers said. It's no longer a feed my family thing. I mean, look at what you're doing. This guy, or earlier in the thing that's being arrested. Yeah, I guess theoretically you could say he should have left to avoid it, but he wanted to stand his ground, and now he's getting arrested. There's got to be more police that are standing up and saying, I did not sign up for this. That I'm here to protect and serve the people and not do the bidding of evil politicians. All right, I'm just going to read a few more chats, and then Linda Hanley, he's no scientist, he's a celebrity. And I've heard it many times that Anthony Fauci has never seen a camera he doesn't like. He loves the spotlight. And doctors who endured the wrath of Fauci back in the 80s during the AIDS days have said the same thing. For 40 years. 40 years. Same guy in the same spot. And just... you can go back and see what happened during the AIDS epidemic or crisis back in the 80s. And nothing's changed. Laura Blair, should the grannies take the front lines? I'm ready. You know, what's funny is, not funny, it was actually really nice to see is that how many Canadian veterans stood yesterday at the bridge in between protesters and police, which I thought was really, really, really amazing to see. And how they were also, some of the military veterans were taking down fences around, some of you in the chat can tell me what it was. I think it was a war memorial, I believe it was. Yeah, Hilda Judah, Dr. Carrie Mullis. I'm not going to read the whole thing for fear of YouTube's wrath. So Canada's watching, only police at the bridge. I heard somebody saying that, they might come back. I don't know if that's gonna happen or not. Donnie Hawk, I can verify I heard police exemption on video. And probably the same video that I watched. But I want somebody to explain that to me. I'd like, if the press were worth a damn, they would ask. And actually, I don't. Justin Trudeau, it looks like he's not taking, or maybe he was taking questions. But I think one of the questions should be, explain to the citizens of Canada why it is the police are exempt from taking it, but the citizens of Canada are not exempt. They are mandated. Shirley Quinn, yes, never should have handed over their guns. Donnie Hawk, Aussies need their guns back. It's funny how, that's how the United States was founded. They wanted to get away from tyranny and oppression from the British. And the right to bear arms is in our Constitution for a reason. Stephen Kosovo unknown soldier. I guess that's what that was. What they were taking the fencing down for. Catherine O'Connell, I felt liberated when the cops handcuffed me. I sang Born Free all the way to jail in a paddy wagon. Well, Catherine, if you were arrested, I'm sorry that happened to you. But you stood for something if that's what you were doing. And Mark Hope, they got to keep their police force healthy. That's funny. And sometimes you have to laugh. Like these I like those comments, sarcasm. Because like I said, with the Babylon Bee, it's a satire. It's become reality. I mean, take a look at our health minister. And has anyone seen this guy who was just appointed in the nuclear energy sector part of our government? I'm afraid to even talk about it because it's so freaking weird. And I still don't believe it. But this guy, I can't remember his name. I'll maybe bring it up next week. Is into some really weird stuff. And it's just really strange. And it's like Idiocracy. If anyone has seen Idiocracy, I never would have thought that I would live to see that the possibility that our actual government would, and our citizenship would actually turn into that. It's absolutely insane. Yeah, Laura Blair, no guns, no violence, please. The cops are on thin ice with the people in Canada. I mean, I agree. You just can't. Violence should not. I mean, things are working without violence. And I think that these governments want violence because it'll give them an excuse. I mean, even when there was no violence at all, Justin Trudeau and the police chief slowly were saying how violent these people were, which was a complete lie. They want you to be. DeCarian, just saw TD Bank has frozen truckers' accounts. I did hear about that this morning. And this goes back to, they couldn't get the GoFundMe thing to work. So people moved on to a platform that is free, Give, Send, Go, who's a good platform. And I'm telling everybody, get the word out. Dump GoFundMe to go to Give, Send, Go. Use Give, Send, Go for raising money for a cause or a charity or whatever it is. But even though Give, Send, Go is basically giving the finger to Canada because Canada is telling them to not distribute the money. Give, Send, Go goes, you have no jurisdiction over us. So they release the money, and now the banks. Now TD, if this is true, I don't want to say that this is true because I'm verified, but any bank that does that, you should pull your money out of it and go somewhere else. Any bank that freezes people's assets because of that, and this goes for all of these companies. They do these types of things. The best thing that anyone can do is move your business somewhere else. And I know that there's people that'll say, well, it's hard because there's not much competition in the particular spaces when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I get that, but these are the things that you cannot allow. Those businesses that go woke, Disney and ESPN are a perfect example of that. In my opinion, if you're investing in those companies, I would go to my broker and I would say, look, you need to find companies to invest in that are not Disney, that are not involved in this woke stuff, or I'm going to find another broker to put my money with. Jamie, use a local bank, not a big bank. I think even, I'm not sure what bank it was, but Lindell with MyPillow had an issue with his bank saying that they were going to shut his stuff down. And I think they were a smaller bank. So you really have to, be very careful and talk to whoever it is if they're a smaller bank, make absolutely sure that kind of stuff isn't going to happen. SAD governments don't work for the people like they should. Like I said before, you're absolutely right. Governments should be working for the people, not a chosen few of quote unquote elites, people who call themselves elites. Because they have to. If you call yourself something, then you're not what it is that you're calling yourself. If you have to do that, that means you're the opposite of it. You're not elite. You think you are. You think you're smarter than other people. You're not. That's what I just find funny is how there's so many of these people, especially the ones, this ivermectin thing, and they think they're smarter. And they look down at people who know the information as dumb. And even when you point it out to them, they still think they're smarter. Okay. Boycott, Shirley Quinn, boycott Ford and Toyota. Yeah, John Galt, the court system is corrupted. Don't count on happy outcomes. This is the scariest part for me, is that the court system has been compromised. You had the executive branch, obviously, and I'm talking American politics, executive branch, it's been compromised for a long time. Legislative, definitely compromised from a long time. And I was hoping that the judicial would be the only one left that would actually save us from the compromised branches of government. And the judicial has been compromised as well, and everywhere, not just from the Supreme Court level, from a federal highest court in the land federal level, but all courts, from state, federal, circuit, everywhere, have been compromised. So when you think that you can go to court and actually have the right thing be decided, that's not the case anymore. And that's the scary thing to me. And, like with the social media companies need to be held accountable for silencing. They should not have immunity from suits. That should be, that should change. And the other immunity, by the way, I'd like to bring up is I would like to ask those who are pro, and I'm not saying, if you want to take it, that's great. But for those who want to force it on everybody is what I'm saying, the procedure. If it's quote unquote safe and effective, and you see, Justin Trudeau, I mean, he's all in, baby. Then why is there immunity from lawsuits? Why are they immune from being sued by people? I know that if I create a product, you have to get insurance, you have to do all these things, because if it doesn't work right, then you have to worry about people coming after you for liability. But immunity from liability, I would like to know if it's just somebody just answer that question. Why do you need immunity from liability? If it's perfect, if it's perfect, then there should not be immunity from liability. And you can see from a social media perspective, immunity from liability, immunity from suits, what that ends up doing. And I haven't even talked about, I know people are probably getting, I know I'm not watching the Super Bowl. This sideshow with Ukraine. If all else fails, let's talk about what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. Let's throw Russia under the bus again, like we did with Trump. And I guarantee you there's still people that believe Trump pissed on prostitutes, but that was all found to be. But it's not in the mainstream media. You're not going to hear that it was all discredited. You're not going to hear that. Because again, it's part of the collusion. But then Ukraine, and I heard something interesting from a very well-known radio talk show host in Russia, is essentially saying that Russia is not the aggressor in this whole thing. I can't confirm this. This is what he's saying. I'm repeating what this guy is saying. That the aggressor is Ukraine in particular pockets in the area within Ukraine that Russian, I guess, is either owned by Russia or occupied by Russian citizens. And Ukraine put troops in those areas, and it was a response by Russia to put troops in, because they saw the aggression coming from Ukraine and also from other countries like United States and Britain being aggressors with sending troops and military equipment to the region. So yeah, Catherine O'Connell, it's a game. It's exactly right. It's a game, because it's like it's pretty kind of weird. Now all of a sudden now we're talking about this, and to me it's a sideshow. And then when I hear from, again, this guy in Russia, very popular as a talk show host, saying that it's the other way around. It's not an aggression from Russia. It's an aggression from Ukraine. Well, that's not what we're hearing in the media. And again, I can't confirm it, but I wouldn't be surprised. Once again, let's use Russia. Let's use Russia to hide our dirty deeds. CNN is trying to provoke the situation. And by the way, I think I also said last week or the week before, CNN has been sold by AT&T. I didn't know. I knew AT&T owned it, but it's been sold to the Discovery Network that has the Discovery Channel. We'll see what ends up happening. And I think, and again, with Jeff Zucker stepping down, Jeff Zucker stepped down not because of a relationship. He just can't run a news network. He rode the wave with Trump because you get a lot of these crazy lunatics that love the bashing of Trump. And so that fed CNN for a while. But when Trump was gone, they didn't have anything to keep those viewers because it was all based on lies. So Jeff Zucker stepping down was more of a corporate politics kind of thing. And I think it has a lot to do with this sale from AT&T to Discovery. We'll see what ends up happening with the new owners. Apparently the guy who runs that or owns it is a billionaire, and he's a Trump supporter. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes down. And I can't, with this thing with the Super Bowl, I just can't get into it. Not with everything that's going on in the world with people, protesting and all the, all these things that are going on in the world to sit there and just watch this. John Galt says 100% distraction sports. That's what it is. It's a distraction to people. Like, it's funny, I had people that, talk about people that really get into it and talk to each other about football and stuff like that all the time. I could never really get into that. I guess, that just wasn't my thing. And I guess if you're into it, there's nothing wrong with that. But it was never my thing. But there are some people that just, really, really get into it. But Mark Hope says the Super Bowl, nothing but bread and circus for the masses, just like the Roman days, to keep them occupied. And that's what a lot of this stuff is to keep people occupied, to keep their attention away from what's really going on. And it's hard for me when I see these things that are going on, when I see these little kids getting so excited when they don't have to wear masks anymore in this Vegas school. And I see the people standing out there in front of the Ambassador Bridge and 20, 30 below degree weather, and having the military push them around. To me, it's just, I just can't get into that stuff. All right, a few more, and then I'm going to sign off here. And again, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being subscribers. Thank you for watching. And also be sure to sign up. I only posted one thing on the Substack, but it's DennisHendrickson.substack.com. I have a bunch of things that I'm working on that I'm going to be posting. So when you sign up on that site, you will be notified when I do post things. Gene Campbell, I'm not totally sure. Explain. There are like certain pockets that all I really know is that Ukraine was, I guess, more of the aggressor in these certain areas that as either Russian occupied or something. I'll clarify that more next week. But from this radio talk show host, essentially what he's saying is that everybody's being told that Russia's being the aggressor, and that's not necessarily the case. I don't want to talk that much more on it because I haven't read up on that side of the story enough to be to speak intelligently on it. So it wouldn't be fair of me to do that. All I know is that it's definitely a surprise to me, because if you hear anything else on the media, it's Russia's being the aggressor. And it just serves the same old thing that you hear over and over and over again. The same people say the same thing. Russia, Russia, Russia. Mark Hope, all the American news media is nothing but flat-out propaganda, even Fox News. I've been accused of you watch Fox News. You criticize CNN and criticize MSNBC, but you watch... I don't watch Fox News. All right, I'll watch Tucker Carlson here and there. But I don't watch Fox News, and I've said this before. I don't have cable. Because it's all like, I guess, what am I going to spend? $300 a month? PLN, thanks you for the super chat. I don't need it. I can watch independent creators and get much better coverage on things and be way more entertained, by the way, by watching them. By watching like Steven Crowder as like a comedy show, or even Jimmy Dore, who's a comedian. These guys are funny. Not Jimmy Fallon is a joke. Stephen Colbert is an idiot. They even kind of like Conan O'Brien, but so yeah, for people to say, oh well, you watch Fox News because you criticize CNN, and I don't. I read articles that people post on all sides, and then I figure out, because I think it's a responsibility as citizens to know what's going on, especially if you are voting. You have a responsibility to pay attention to current events and what's really going on in the world, and to trust mainstream media. You can't do that. You have an obligation as a voter to pay attention to what's going on in the real world and not get it from CNN and MSNBC on TV. You have an obligation, if you are going to be a voter, to figure out what's going on in the world, because you're affecting the lives of other people. Hilda Judah, Klaus Schwab has said that 80% of jobs can be replaced by robots, by artificial intelligence. Klaus Schwab is old as dirt. I don't know. I don't even think he knows how to turn on a computer. And to listen to this piece of trash talk about technology, what does he know about technology? He knows nothing about technology. He doesn't know anything about coding. He doesn't know how to build a website. He doesn't know how to work I guarantee you, he knows nothing about any of that stuff. And for somebody like this guy, this douche, to sit there and tell everybody what they should be doing with their lives and how technology is so important and no, well, technology is so important. Why does everybody get hacked all the time? Why is all of our information out there in the? I mean, I'd rather go back to paper and paper files. I feel more comfortable doing that. I mean, the only thing really the internet has really done is be able to speed up the process of sending information back and forth. But for this guy, Klaus Schwab, to sit there, who's, I don't know how old he is, got to be in his 80s, late 70s or 80s, to talk about somehow like he knows technology, that's a joke to me. Jamie Schwab is involved in the great. He is. This whole Great Reset, and this isn't like made up stuff. And I wasn't going to talk about this, but Larry Fink and BlackRock and all these companies, they want to own everything. They'll own all of the property. BlackRock will buy up all the homes that are foreclosed on, and they'll own everything. They'll own all the companies. They'll own all of the resorts that you go to. Meanwhile, they'll be the ones down in the rainforest in South Africa cutting trees down that are involved in that. They're also involved in Neil Young buying out his whole music portfolio before he decided that he was going to quit Spotify because of Joe Rogan. BlackRock's involved in everything. And so These guys, they don't want you to own anything. And Justin Trudeau, the student of Klaus Schwab, he's acting on that whole premise of you'll own nothing. You know, trucks that drive themselves will deliver goods. You'll stay home, and Zuckerberg will have you'll strap on some headgear and you'll live in a metaverse just sitting at your home, because it's about global warming. And these guys think that they've got it all figured out. And by the way, Zuckerberg stole his whole idea from the Winklevoss twins. Here's another guy that everybody puts on a pedestal, and he stole Facebook. I mean, this is widely known. He stole the idea from classmates at Harvard. He didn't come up with Facebook. He stole it. He stole the code. He stole everything. And then on top of that, he did the same thing that Gates tried to do to his partners at Microsoft, dilute their shares so he could take control of everything. So Zuckerberg and Gates they're two peas in the pod. These are people who, for whatever reason, were hated by everybody because of what dicks they are. And I guess they're just taking it out on everybody now. But you have to understand that, stop putting these people on a pedestal, because Gates had his whole path was laid out for him. He was a millionaire when he was born. Zuckerberg, and a lot of the stuff he took, he didn't invent. Zuckerberg stole his idea for Facebook. And somehow these people are like, oh, well, because Facebook sucks so bad, I'm going to rename it to Meta. That'll change it. That'll bring billions of people back to it. We can go ahead and strap on some goggles and you can just stay at home all day. Zuckerbot, more like a lizard. M. Smith, police are not mandated to take the jab, but you are, and they are enforcing your lack of choice. My perspective, revenge of the nerds. That's very well said. These dorks are trying to get back at everybody because nobody liked them when they were in college. They couldn't get laid in a women's prison with a fistful of pardons when they were younger. And not just simply because of looks, but because they were jerks to people. And now they're making up for it, I guess. Concerned citizen, who cares about Zuckerberg or Facebook? The problem is that you have to care, because these are supposedly platforms that the only places that people can go in order to have a town square to speak about things that are being suppressed by mass media are these platforms. And I know the argument's going to be, well, you can go to Rumble, you can go to Parler, Gab. It's not the same thing. I mean, they're gaining some traction, but it's really hard to get anywhere with those platforms. These platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, they've been around a long time, so just about everybody's there. It's just not fair that these platforms silence those who have a different point of view, and that has to stop. So the Section 230 thing And politicians, I think they're getting tons of money from these companies, and that's why they're not touching it. So MLCM9, Revenge of the Nerds on steroids. Ghost of Christmas. I want to say, please, everyone, make sure your phone is recording the police, record people that work in government. Yeah, I mean, everybody, we're all pretty much having to become citizen journalists. Everybody. I mean, we have to kind of record what's going on because these things are not being, again, the worst thing when it comes to media, mass media, is not being told lies, but then on top of that, having news suppressed. That is bad. And that's what's happening, is news is being silenced. And that is a good thing for the alternate media coming out, because then you can go to different places, but the media the social media we have now shouldn't be suppressed, period. All right, guys. I'm going to sign off. I think numbers are dwindling. And again, I appreciate it. Make sure you, on the way out, hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. And be sure to get on the Substack, DennisHendrickson.substack.com, for kind of even longer kind of stuff, more in-depth kind of things that I'll be posting. Again, I don't have a lot on there right now, but I will be. And I will see you guys over there. And may I say, let's go, Brandon. Thanks, Jamie. All right, everybody, I'm out. Have a great rest of the weekend. I will see you next week.